So this past weekend, one of my best friends called me and said, I'm done with my 9-to-5 job. I want to start a startup, and he asked me for advice. So I gave him a ton of advice, and I figured, hey, this would make a good YouTube video. So what I'm going to share in this video, kind of my story, some personal tidbits, some advice, is the exact same thing I told my best friend. If you don't know who I am, my name's Alex Monahan. I started a sports data, a sports betting company at 24, and within 3.5 years, I'd sold that company for $160 million to a public company called gambling.com. In this video, I'm just going to be sharing everything you need to know about starting a startup from the idea phase. How do you know it's the right idea? To the execution, how did we get our initial users, and ultimately to the decision to sell the company. Obviously, like in some ways this was my baby. Selling a company isn't always easy, especially if you have a great thing going, a profitable business going. But I'm going to explain everything you need to know about starting a company, and everything, of course, is my perspective. So if you disagree with me, that's okay. This is what worked for me. So basically, I always thought growing up, I was going to work in healthcare. So in high school, I thought I was going to be a doctor. I had a lot of cancer in my family. A lot of my family worked in healthcare, so I was motivated to it. I thought I would change the world, work in healthcare, cure cancer. So one of my first jobs in college, I took a part-time job at Stanford at a medical company that was looking to do some amazing things. I took a business development role, and that involved me going to conferences, these medical conferences. Obviously, I have a immense respect for so many people who work in healthcare, but I've kind of realized pretty quickly, a lot of this industry revolves around money. Like there were so many physicians, so many doctors who were just focused on their bottom line. How can you make money? Everything was about money. And healthcare was never super interesting to me. Like I was interested in math, I was interested in science, so it checked out like, hey, maybe I'd be a good doctor. And I obviously cared about helping people, but it wasn't something where I woke up and every morning I just wanted to look into medicine and see new research studies. I wasn't super passionate about it, but what I was passionate about was gambling. I always loved poker. I always loved blackjack. You know, when I was in college at Stanford, I spent a lot of my free time going to a casino, a local casino with friends. We would drive over on a Friday night, we would play poker, and I loved it. I loved the game theory aspect. I loved kind of trying to understand the strategy. How can I actually win long-term at this game? One of my friends actually recommended that I apply for an internship at a company called Susquehanna, which was a quant trading firm. He recommended it because he said, if you work there, you get to play poker at work. That is what appealed to me. I got paid well, and you literally got to play poker at work. So at Susquehanna, a quant trading firm, trading is basically gambling in financial markets. They teach you poker and poker strategy to kind of teach you decision making. How do you think as a trader? How do you size bets? How do you know when to fold, when to back out of a trade versus when to double down? So I joined this company and I loved it. It was a bunch of people who were really good at math, were really good at statistics, and were passionate about gambling. And I realized kind of like in my core, I'm a gambler. So I joined Susquehanna, I took a job, and I learned so much about financial markets. At the time, I was an index derivatives trader. So I was basically trading options on ETFs like Jets. Jets is an airlines ETF, so it has a bunch of airline stocks, American Airlines, United Airlines. So I was trading a bunch of financial products. I loved gambling. Every day at work was super fun. And in 2018, sports betting was legalized in the US. So the Supreme Court overturned and said basically states can decide if they have legal sports betting or no legal sports betting. And that's the reason why still to this day, some states have legal online sports betting and some don't. And I was currently working in Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania, there's not a ton going on there. I didn't know many people, so I spent all my time working or kind of researching startup ideas. Pennsylvania was one of the first states to legalize online sports betting. And unsurprisingly, it kind of became like the talk of the office. Traders are people who spend all day gambling at work. So unsurprisingly, they like to gamble, and when sports betting legalizes, that's gonna be something that's talked about. So I started to talk to a lot of my bosses, a lot of my colleagues about, hey, does anyone bet on sports? And a lot of them did. And these guys are, really smart people. They are traders, quantitative traders, quants, who make tens of millions of dollars per year trading stocks, options, bonds. They know what they're talking about. Like, they're pretty good gamblers. So I listened to advice from a bunch of people and I realized, hey, I want to give this sports betting thing a try. So I started betting on sports just for fun. I signed up for FanDuel. I signed up for DraftKings and I just wanted to test it out. Can I make money? What's amazing about sports betting is the market was so fragmented. It was so new, so inefficient. 20 sports books launched in Pennsylvania in like 1 month. I signed up for every single one. I was looking for mispricings. I was looking for where a player would get injured and the sports book wouldn't adjust quickly and I could pick them off, and I loved it. So basically every single day I would go into work from 9 to 4 when financial markets closed, and I would trade index derivatives. I would gamble in financial markets, and then I would drive home, I would speed home, and I would bet on sports, and I would research sports betting. I've always loved sports. I was never good at sports. When I was a little kid, I always thought I was going to be a professional athlete. Obviously, that didn't happen. But I've always loved sports, so betting on sports and getting an edge over the sports books was something I was super passionate about. And I realized, hey, the sports betting market is so inefficient. It is so fragmented that you can actually make money gambling. It's crazy. There are so many books launching. They all want to set their own unique odds, and sometimes they get out of sync, and you can arbitrage bet. You can do all these different strategies that actually make money. So I started to spend so much of my free time sports betting, especially once COVID hit and there was nothing to do. There were no restaurants to go to. There were no bars open. People weren't really hanging out. I lived in Pennsylvania. My family wasn't there. I basically spent all my time, all my free time researching the sports betting industry, looking for bets, and it became something that kind of became a part of my life. And ultimately, I realized when I go into work at 9 a.m., I'm sad. I'm sad because I can't gamble. I'm sad because I can't research sports betting. I'm sad because I can't see these sportsbook mispricings and find them when I'm at work. Basically, the kind of thought that popped into my head is, well, maybe I can do something in sports betting. Maybe there's a business here and I just haven't thought of it. I love doing this. This is something I could spend 100 hours a week on. And I want to be very clear, whatever startup, whatever business you want to run, you're going to have to work really hard, which means hundreds of hours a week. And ideally, you don't hate your life. And the only way to do that is to pick a company you're actually passionate about. I loved gambling. To my core, I enjoy it. I will always enjoy gambling. Doesn't matter how much money there is. I enjoy placing bets. I enjoy finding profitable bets, kind of being in on something, having an edge other people don't have. And I like watching sports. So this business was kind of the perfect combination for me. What I started to think about is, maybe there's a business in sports betting. I started to research sports betting, and kind of my conclusions were two of them. One, there's no good sports betting content. Anything about sports betting, when I started to research it, was BS. It was, hey, the Lakers, LeBron James, they're gonna win. Bet the Lakers and buy my premium picks package. It was so much BS. There was no data. There was no math. It was just all talking about sports and then giving out a bet at the end. I realized there's no good content. And then the second thing I realized is there are hundreds of sports books that are coming into the United States and nobody really has good data. There is nowhere I can look and see player prop line discrepancies, which is crazy because now there's tons of companies that have copied OddsJam or followed OddsJam's lead. There's tons of companies that show mispricings and do all these different things. At the time, there were none. If you wanted to find good bets, you basically had to do it manually. Bijan Robinson to score a touchdown could have been plus 1,000 on FanDuel, plus 100 on every other book. You would have had to find that line discrepancy manually. So what I started to think is, if I could get a product where we had data from every single sports book and we were able to showcase all of the data in a way that people understood, kind of like a Bloomberg terminal. I was a trader. I was used to Bloomberg terminals. What I started to think is, hey, if we had a Bloomberg terminal for sports betting and we maybe ultimately created actually good content about how to use data to your advantage as a sports bettor, maybe some people would stop just betting with random knowledge and start to take a data-driven approach. I knew I was making money myself sports betting. I saw my own results and I was like, hey, this like quant trading, like nerdy data stuff, it works in sports betting too. Arbitrage, positive EV, middle betting, like it's all about the data. And this is the same thing I learned at work. One of the top trading firms in the world, all we talked about was data. There was no random BS, but that's all the sports betting industry was at the time. So I realized, hey, if I kind of bring this data to sports betting, there's probably some customers we can get. So ultimately, I decided to quit my job, which was super stressful, but I think in life, there's only a few chances you get for something you're really passionate about to take a shot, especially when you're young. Like I didn't have kids, I wasn't married. Worst case, okay, whatever. If the sports betting thing doesn't work out, I guess I can just like apply for another job, and sure, I may get paid less at my next job, but I'll probably be able to get a job. So I figured, why not take a shot? Aside from losing some money, it took like $20,000, $25,000, I think, to start OddsJam. Aside from just losing some initial startup capital, what's the downside? Once I quit my full-time job, my motivation to make OddsJam work, to actually make this company work, kind of skyrocketed. So initially, we built out the initial product. We found initial data feeds for all of these different sports books, and we put together the initial product. And the company grew very slowly, like $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month, but it wasn't taking off. What ended up happening is some customer reached out from Florida and he said, hey, there's no sports books in Florida. There's no legal sports betting. So your product is pretty worthless for me, but I have some tips and I sold a company to NBC. So I think I could provide you some good advice. I got on the phone with him and he said, why don't you do content about your product? Like you're clearly pretty smart. You love to gamble yourself. Why don't you make a bunch of tutorials and videos and live streams about how you're using your own product to make money sports betting? Like people relate to people. And I never created content. I was never on social media. I did not have a YouTube. I had an Instagram with like 40 followers that I never checked with 2 photos posted. But basically I never used social media. And I was like, oh, like social media, I looked down on influencers. Like, oh, they're just girls dancing on TikTok. That's what I thought at the time. But what he said was very true, and it kind of resonated. Is he told me something which kind of hit me, and I was like, wow, that's a good way to put it. Is he said, if you're not willing to put your own face behind a product and a betting system, why should other people? Maybe you were able to get a few influencers and you were able to pay them to market your product, but why would other people use your product if you're not even willing to show your own face and really show how you're finding bets with the product? I was very nervous to create my first YouTube video now. I mean, I literally spun up this camera and I've probably been talking for 5 minutes straight. I'm kind of used to it. Initially, I was very nervous, like, oh, what if people think I'm a loser? What if my friends make fun of me? What if my, previous colleagues make fun of me? But I ultimately kind of stopped caring. It's like I had to make this company work or I was gonna have to get another job. So I did my first YouTube video. It took me like a billion takes, literally. I think I spent 2 weeks recording the first 5 minutes of the video. I was insanely nervous, insanely anxious. So it took me 2 weeks to do the first 5 minutes of my first YouTube video that now has over 1 million views, which is crazy. Basically, I recorded the video. My mom, who is a muralist, she's a very talented artist, she was like, I'll edit it for you. So she helped me edit it. She'd never edited a video in her life, but she kind of downloaded the software and she has an artsy mind. So she helped me edit the initial video and I uploaded it to YouTube. And I was so nervous after uploading the video to YouTube. All my friends are gonna text me and tell me, LOL, you're such a nerd, or I don't know. I don't even know what I was scared of. But I was so nervous about uploading this video to YouTube, I like immediately fell asleep for 12 hours at 4 p.m. after clicking the publish button. I just wanted to sleep and like ignore the world. And basically, this video started to do well. It started to get some views. It took a bit, but it started to get some views, and with views came customers, free customers. That's the best part. If you record a video, if you create content, it's just your time you're putting in. You're not paying anybody. After I record this video, I'm just gonna publish it to YouTube. Obviously, the goal of this video isn't to sell you a product or a course or anything. It's simply to share my experience. But if you record a video for your product and you upload it to YouTube, There's no cost. If you can get views on that, or if that video goes viral, it's free marketing, which is amazing. Because a video with 1 million views, you would have to pay an influencer tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to get. I started to realize, hey, I can just do these YouTube videos, and I started to do 1, 2, 3 YouTube videos a day. Here's my bets, and I loved it. Once I got over the hump of everybody is gonna make fun of me and call me a loser, and realized nobody really cares. Everyone's focused on their own lives, their own girlfriends. Nobody cares if I do YouTube videos or not. I started pumping content. Here's my bets, here's my bets, here's my bets. And OddsJam just absolutely skyrocketed. I mean, within a few months, we were making, millions of dollars, essentially like every single year in terms of ARR. So ARR is just your annual run rate. So if you're making $100,000 a month, that means your ARR would be $1.2 million a year. You make $100,000 a month, that's $1.2 million a year. So that was kind of the initial start of OddsJam. And from there, off of organic content, the business really took off. Nothing complicated. We had a good product. I spent a lot of my time with my co-founder on engineering, on design, on things like that. After a few months of creating content, we were getting thousands of messages every single day. Hey, I have questions about this product. And it was pretty clear we had product market fit. Like, there are sports bettors who are interested in data, who don't just want to bet on random things with their gut or just off of sports knowledge. We're kind of on to something here. I went down to Florida to meet the guy who actually told me to do content in the first place. He was working at NBC. And what he told me is, hey, you guys got to hire people. Like, Alex, you're spending hundreds of hours responding to questions about the product. You can probably find somebody who can do that well. That will free you up to do other things. And hiring is the most important thing. If you want to start a startup, you want to start a business, you're not going to be able to do everything. You can't be customer support, the lead engineer, the designer, the marketer. You can't do everything. Even if you work 120 hours a week, you can't do everything. So he told me, find an employee who can respond to messages, who understands your product, who can explain to people on the phone arbitrage, so you don't have to answer the phone with every single person and tell them, hey, this is how it works, and just repeat yourself. So what I did is he told me, think about the user who is most passionate about your product. So there was one guy who had emailed me. His name's Randall. He was our first employee. He emailed me nonstop. Questions about the product. He was so passionate about it. He would be emailing me at 2 a.m. the bets he was finding, issues with the site. If a sports book went down that he was using, he would be emailing me. He was just hammering my email, and I realized, hey, maybe that's a good guy to reach out to. So I reached out to Randall. At the time, he was a public school teacher in Illinois, and I basically said, hey, I'll pay you way more money if you just help out with customer support, things like that. He was thrilled. I was thrilled. We were both passionate about sports betting. We liked each other. We met in person, and we hired our first person. And from that point, I didn't have to focus on customer support. I didn't have to focus on any of that nonsense. So basically, it freed up a lot of my time. I could create more content, get more people in the door who Randall would ultimately sell, upsell, and that was a better way to build a business. So that's ultimately the approach we took, is what can you outsource? What can you hire people for? Because that's really important. You are not going to be able to do everything. There are so many startup founders I see who try to do everything. And I'm super stringent on costs. To be clear, me and my co-founder, we had no outside capital. So basically, any dollar we spent was coming from us. It wasn't coming from a VC. If we spent $100,000, that was $50,000 out of each of our pockets, basically, in terms of profit for the business. So we definitely ran the business lean, and we were very thoughtful, which is important because so many people think about starting a business and they just want to raise money and blow money and, do partnerships with massive companies and massive influencers, and they just want to spend, spend, spend. But ultimately, that's not how the world works. A dollar has to equal a dollar. If you put $1 into marketing, it needs to equal $2. So if we put $5,000 into an influencer, we paid an influencer $5,000 to make a YouTube video about us, we'd want to track it and make sure we made at least $5,000 back. Otherwise, we don't want to work with that influencer again. So basically, from that point on, YouTube was our initial wave of customers. And then we started other social media platforms, TikTok, Twitter. Now I'm on Twitter. I post bets there. I post threads there, educational content, all sorts of things. Is what we kind of realized is, hey, if YouTube worked well, maybe Twitter will work well. So after the initial growth spike from YouTube, I started Twitter. Twitter was a platform I'd never used, never thought I would use, but I started using it solely for the purpose of marketing my business. Obviously now I enjoy tweeting. I enjoy social media overall. But Twitter, Twitch, we started to layer on these other social media platforms. Not everyone watches YouTube videos. So if you're not on Twitter, you're missing out on sports bettors who might love OddsJam and make a ton of money from it. And obviously, I truly believe OddsJam is the best sports betting product. It actually makes people money once they know what they're doing. So after YouTube, we launched Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram. Some platforms had more success than others, but that led to a massive wave of growth. So we really initially, we didn't spend much money on marketing. We paid influencers, we tracked their results via promo codes, affiliate links to make sure they actually converted for us. But for the most part, it was solely organic marketing. We weren't paying anything for marketing, very low cost business. The only cost was the people we'd hired and the very low server and data costs. So as a founder at OddsJam, I always spent at least a few hours a day doing content, right? I believed it was important for a few reasons. One, to market the product, obviously, but the second reason is it keeps you really close to customers. You get ideas for other products. You don't miss out on things. So for example, OddsJam was around for a bit, is during that time, new sports books launched. And some of these books worked in different ways, like Prize Picks and Underdog Fantasy. They were non-traditional sports books that OddsJam ultimately ended up building tools for. So seeing their popularity, talking to users, and users just saying, hey, we want betting tools for Prize Picks, we want tools for Underdog Fantasy, ultimately led to our Fantasy Optimizer, our product for Prize Picks and Underdog. I feel like a lot of founders, they think they're so important, they don't want to talk to users. Me, on the other hand, I have thousands of customers who have my own personal cell phone number. They text me with bets, they text me with questions. In some ways it's fun. It's kind of like building a community or making friends. But in other ways, it kind of teaches me, where are people confused about the product? Where can we improve the design? Where can we improve the onboarding? Because I spend some of my day on design, engineering, onboarding. And it also teaches me, what do people want? If there's a really popular sports book and we don't have it on OddsJam, obviously my first instinct would be we need to get it added and we need to make sure we're showing people profitable bets for this sports book. So talking to users, staying close to the customer is important. This is a huge tip for entrepreneurs. As a business, you're not creating something cool. You're not creating something you think is cool. You're creating something other people think is valuable enough to pay for. That's the only way a business works. A lot of people, like to look at Jeff Bezos. He's this evil business guy, and I mean, I don't know much, but Amazon improves my life a lot, so I use it a lot. I literally get things shipped to my doorstep in a few hours or a day. It's absolutely insane. It is a product that massively improves my life. That's why I use Amazon. And that's most customers. They only use your product if you're helping them. So talking to a bunch of users who are trying out your product, who are trialing it, or who have been using it for a long time, I would constantly ask people, how can we make the product better, less confusing? Right? How can we add in features that help you make more money? So staying close to the customer is super important and super underestimated. Talking to customers literally every single day on live streams, on text, on email, helped me not only come up with new product ideas, new feature ideas, but also understand just how to simplify the product, how to make it easier to understand for new people. Where are people getting confused? So I spent a lot of my day talking to customers, creating content, staying very close to the product. I spent a lot of my day on engineering, design, and also just hiring. I mean, I explained earlier, hiring is the most important thing at a business. A business is ultimately a collection of people working towards one goal. So in the case of OddsJam, it's a bunch of people working to create the best sports betting tools, the best sports betting products. So finding good people is important. So I was constantly thinking about whenever I'd get an email from a customer, hey, I love your product, here's what I want. Not only would I take the feedback as inspiration for future product ideas, enhancements, but I would also think, hey, maybe this person's a good hire. We actually ended up hiring about half of our employees just from our email list. So people who are super passionate about the product, and they were also smart, right? It goes both ways. We don't just want degenerate gamblers who want to gamble all day long. We want people who love sports betting and are passionate about building the future of sports betting. Ultimately, we ended up hiring like 10, 15 people directly from our customer list, people who used the product and enjoyed sports betting. Because again, you want people to obviously like their jobs, and people are going to be passionate about working at OddsJam if they enjoy sports betting and they enjoy the sports betting industry and they like what we're trying to build. So OddsJam ultimately scaled and scaled and scaled. Again, the main point I want to make is it's really important to stay close to the customer and also focus on hiring. I think those are the two things a lot of founders get wrong. Founders try to do everything themselves. You need to spend money. You need to hire good people who can free you up to work on higher leverage things. If you're answering customer support and you're making $40 million a year at your company, you're probably doing something wrong, and your company probably could be making $80 million if you hired a customer support guy and ended up working on higher leverage things like closing deals. Focusing on hiring and staying close to the customer. I mean, I love sports betting, so it's easy for me. I like talking to other sports bettors. I like learning about new sports books. I like thinking about new feature ideas that people are asking for and designing them and actually implementing them in code so we have a legitimate product that is making people money or making them better sports bettors. And we were growing basically every month. I mean, we had some down months, obviously. In the summer, things slow down. There's only baseball, not NFL. But overall, at some point, life kind of kicks in. Like, I'm almost 30. We had people reaching out to us expressing interest in, hey, we'd consider buying your company. And that's ultimately why I sold it. I love sports betting. I'm passionate about sports betting, but it was a pretty simple decision. I can continue to work in sports betting. I can continue to work at OddsJam after the company is acquired. I'm sure they'll keep me as an employee if I want. So I kind of thought it's, sure, maybe you're trading some upside. You now have a boss. Once you sell your company, like when we sold OddsJam a year ago, now I have a boss, right? I work for somebody else for the past year. And in some ways, that's very different than running your own company and you're the big boss and you can tell people what to do. But it's also in some ways very freeing. Like, it's someone else's baby, you're giving up your baby, and you can still help it grow, you can still help it contribute, but you also have the ability to start thinking about other ideas. I would say it's a very personal decision deciding to ultimately sell a company. I don't really think there's any glory there. Or thinking about why you should sell a company versus not sell a company. So much of it is personal, right? Do you want the grind? Everyone comes to you with their problems. Or do you want to sell your company and you're giving up some upside, but you're also reducing downside and reducing a little bit of pressure? And at the time when we sold OddsJam, I thought that was worth it for me. I thought it was worth it to reduce the stress and give up some upside to reduce some downside. What if sports betting gets banned in every state? Our business would be screwed. We would be massively compromised at the very least if the Supreme Court was like, actually, we want to ban gambling again. So I thought it was worth it at the time. That's why we ended up selling the company. And, again, this video was very much so a rant, but I think the important things to take from it are, one, focus on hiring. It's really important. Two, actually listen to customers. Nobody cares about your ideas. I have a ton of ideas that nobody cares about. Customers don't care. I want to see them in our product, but customers don't. So we're not going to build them. Talk to customers nonstop. Give them your phone number. Talk to them on the phone. Live stream with them. Get opinions from them. I guess the third thing is, in terms of why did I decide to start this company, is you don't have many shots in your life, right? Like, You're not going to be able to start 100 companies. Most companies take 5 years to build. Obviously, there's the extreme cases of crazy people who are way smarter than I am, probably way harder working, all that good stuff, who start multiple companies at the same time and are super successful. That's extremely rare. Starting a company is nonstop work. It takes years and years and years to build. Whenever you decide on a company, you're committing to it for probably at least 3, 4, 5 years. Even if you end up having massive success and getting acquired, it's probably going to be a minimum of a few years. I mean, literally, and that's the bare minimum. Most companies, it's much longer than that. It's 7, 8 years. So is this something you'd be passionate about? You could envision yourself working on for 10 years, a decade, I think is a good kind of proxy. I would never start a company in something I couldn't see myself working on for literally at the minimum 5 years. Never. I hope you enjoyed this video. Very much so a monologue, a rant, but hopefully somebody found something useful. I mean, literally my friend called me. He asked me for all my advice, kind of the story of starting OddsJam. This is basically exactly what I said. Obviously, some parts are going to be slightly different because I didn't record the exact phone conversation, but I kind of wish I did. But regardless, hopefully you enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for your time.